Welcome to tonight's non-traditional school options panel discussion. We're so happy that you're able to join us. And we are holding this panel discussion because a lot of times choices are critical for many children and youth with special needs who may not respond well to traditional settings. And we wanted to provide an opportunity to have some discussion with providers of resources for non-traditional academic settings, and that's what brings us together tonight. So if I could have my next slide advanced, we will begin with a little introduction as to who formed Families Forward, what we are as an organization. We are a family-led resource center in Northern Virginia supporting foster, adoptive, and kinship families who are raising children and youth. And excuse me for a second, I have something going on here. All right, we're good now. Technology. The children and youth and young adults, they have special needs, and professionals who work with them are also individuals or organizations that we support. And we offer free training through consultations to families and events and resources and systems navigation. We also offer peer support groups, webinars like tonight, and trainings in person when we aren't under COVID restrictions. And we offer youth classes, podcasts, which can be found on our website in our archive section, and videos and other resources. And we also offer we are also a family partner to Virginia Tiered Systems of Support. And our executive director is Kelly Henderson, who is running the technical side of tonight's webinar. And I am Lisa Matthew, the training and administrative coordinator, and I will be facilitating tonight. Some of our upcoming events: we have our Forum Families Together Peer Support Group meeting, which will happen next Wednesday, November 17th from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. in our Fairfax office, and information can be found through the link that you see on this slide. And the slides also appear in the handouts so that you can access them later. We also have our Stronger Together Peer Support Group meeting for youth and young adults ages 14 to 22. It is clinician-led, so they do have some structure to their meetings and opportunities for support. The next meeting for this group is November 16th, and registration can also be found in the link that appears here in the screen and the handouts. And then we have a family fun event planned in December. It is on Friday, December 10th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's our virtual holiday family game night. We are going to play some online games for some prizes, and we may have a special visitor for the children and young youth and young adults if they choose to share any exciting holiday secrets that they may have for upcoming celebrations. Next slide, please. And for some housekeeping for tonight, we would like you to ask questions, and that can be done by using the questions pod that you can find on your dashboard. For most participants, it is on the right side of their screen. You can also post your comments. Others will not see your questions or comments. Kelly will be assisting in sharing what you have posted with us throughout the session. All recordings, slides, and handouts will be on the Forum Families Forward website under Resources, Webinars. And if you need a certificate of attendance, you can email info@forumfamiliesforward.org, and one will be sent to you as quickly as we can get to it. So next slide, please. Tonight, we will be covering and discussing an increased awareness of non-traditional school options for children who have special education needs and other academic challenges, as well as sharing enrichment programs and other resources for supporting children and youth who attend non-traditional programs. And these objectives will be covered by our wonderful panelists that have joined us tonight. We have Jenny Grove Bradshaw of the Compass School Enrichment Program. We have Catherine Kitely of Fusion Academy, Andrea McKay of the Virginia Homeschoolers Association, Carol Sibniak, parent of a non-traditional student, as well as Nancy Thompson, another parent of a non-traditional student, and Sarah Warnick of Virtual Virginia. And they will be introducing themselves in depth in just a second. So I'd like to start off with Jenny and ask that you tell us a little bit about yourself, your organization or school, and your personal and professional experiences related to non-traditional approach to education.
Okay, thank you. So I'm the founder and director of the Compass Homeschool Program. We're located in Fairfax County in a dedicated learning center in Herndon, just off Fairfax County Parkway and the Dulles Toll Road. Compass, we're in our 10th year, so we've been doing this for a little bit of time now. But personally, I'm the homeschool parent of 16-and-a-half-year-old twin daughters. They've never been to traditional school. They've been homeschooled all along. And so I've been involved in every level of homeschooling from pre-K through now 12th grade this year, and we have just survived the college application process. So it was as a homeschool parent that I saw a need in our community for organized, kind of professionally run homeschool enrichment classes and activities and kind of a community hub. And so that was all in my mind when I launched Compass in September of 2012.
Thank you for that introduction. Next, I'd like to go to Andrea.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea, and I actually am the president currently of the Organization of Virginia Homeschoolers, which is a statewide homeschool support and advocacy organization. We are completely inclusive. We try to support homeschoolers regardless of their persuasion, both religiously, politically, or in any other way. So we're there to support everyone in their homeschooling journey. A little bit about myself. I'm the mom of three very individually different and unique learners. They are grown now. My youngest is 19. And I was also a Montessori teacher for 10 years. So I've always sort of done the alternative path, and that I was sort of led to that by my children and their individualized needs. So I also 5 years ago founded a nonprofit self-directed education center in Northern Virginia called Embark Center for Self-Directed Education, where we help kids to be able to leave school when school isn't a good fit. And so it sounds like the folks that you work with are the folks that I work with there. So I'm gonna not have that hat on tonight, though. I'll have on my Virginia Homeschoolers President hat to be able to answer any questions relating to homeschooling. Shout out though to Jenny. We actually often recommend Compass. It's a great program, and Jenny also has a wealth of knowledge for homeschooling. So I'm sure between the two of us, we'll be able to tackle those questions that you might have. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for that introduction. Next, I would like to go to Sarah Warnick.
Hi, good evening. I'm Sarah Warnick, and my role is the Director of Products and Services with Virtual Virginia. Virtual Virginia is a program of the Virginia Department of Education, and we partner with public schools, but we also serve private school students and homeschool students. And homeschool students may come from Virginia, but they may also be out of state, and occasionally we have some students out of the country that take some courses with us as well. A little bit about me: I'm a former Spanish and ESL classroom teacher, and worked in Hanover County before transitioning to Virtual Virginia in 2007, and have been working closely with the program. We have really grown over the years, growing from essentially what was an AP school, just providing courses that served primarily rural areas where they just didn't have AP courses, or they had maybe very limited offerings, to now becoming a K through 12 program. So the program provides core instruction and elective courses for graduation in Virginia. We serve K through 5 students. Our content aligns to the Virginia standards. For K through 5, we offer reading and writing, math and science and social studies, but we also offer supplemental instruction in STEM, world languages, ballroom dance, fine arts, physical education, and computer science. And our secondary students also can take courses with us full-time or on a part-time basis. Our courses are in the core areas in English, math, science, and social studies, but also many elective courses, world languages. We offer ASL, Arabic, Chinese, French, and Latin. We're growing. We are adding 3 new languages next year, and also continuing to expand those at the elementary level, trying to get our students started as early as possible. Adding as well fine arts and career and technical education classes. We are very proud of our AP students. They consistently score. We have 28 AP courses, and they consistently score above the state and national averages. And we work really closely. Our model is synchronous and asynchronous. So our students, we believe you've got to have that balance of opportunities for whole group and small group and one-to-one instruction to really personalize experiences for students.
Thank you for that very robust introduction. Next, if we can try to get Catherine in to do her introduction.
Yes, so hi, this is, oh, Catherine, there you are. If you can try to show your camera, we should be able to allow you in. We can hear you.
You can hear me, that's good. I'm trying to figure out how to let you see me. Well, maybe I'll talk and then you guys can see me later so we don't hold up the show. How about that? So I'm happy to be here. I am the head of school for Fusion Academy in Alexandria. We are a customized one-on-one education model for middle and high school students, fully accredited. We focus on the whole student, academic, social, and emotional. My background, I'm a former nonprofit executive director, youth development nonprofits. I was a founding board member of the Virginia Girls Summit, focused on teenage girls and their challenges. I also spent 2.5 years as a Fairfax County Public School high school teacher. And I have 2 children. I have a son who's 21, who sailed through traditional education, just a perfect match for him. I also have a 16-year-old daughter who was adopted from Russia, who had a great experience through 6th grade, and then in 7th grade had a lot of emotional and social challenges that began to impact her academically. I moved her to Fusion after doing lots of research. I love the one-on-one model. I love the content mastering model. I loved how they allowed her to build her self-confidence so that she could take academic risks and become more confident academically. So that's me and Fusion Academy. And I will work on my camera.
Great, thank you. Could I have Nancy for her introduction?
Hi, I'm Nancy Thompson. I'm a lawyer and a recent board member at Form Families. I'm the parent of a 19-year-old daughter who we adopted at birth domestically. And she was in public schools, K through 9, in a traditional school. But early on in 1st grade, got an IEP for anxiety, which as the years progressed, we got a diagnosis of high functioning autism. And her challenges in her intellect continued to grow, but the challenges of both learning needs and social and emotional needs were some that we found weren't really supported adequately in the public school system as time progressed. And we started looking for alternatives that would provide an environment where she could really learn at her pace and not be overwhelmed by large classrooms in the public schools, particularly at the middle school and the high school level. And as we began that search, we learned about Fusion, and we actually were a parent for 2 years at the Tyson's Fusion campus, and she graduated in 2020, and that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you for giving your time and sharing your personal experience. And our last introduction, Carol, if you could share a little bit,
Sure.
please.
Hi, I'm Carol Siebenek, and I'm a parent of a high school senior who's been homeschooled since the end of 8th grade. We had one false start with a private school, and prior to that, he attended public school in Fairfax County. And Evan was adopted internationally as an infant, as was his older brother, Matt, who attended public school. Just as Sarah said, I'm sorry, maybe not Sarah. Someone said that, the older child did fine in public school, and that was our case. So it came as a great surprise when we had to adjust to this kid who just didn't fit in with the standard curriculum and the structure of traditional school. I'm also a psychologist with a private practice. I occasionally teach on an adjunct basis at the University of Maryland in particular, which is my alma mater. And my experience with Evan's challenges in traditional schooling and the research I've done to try to meet his needs have definitely informed my professional work. It's been just an amazingly rich, difficult experience, and saving graces were Compass and Fusion, where he is now doing some tutoring and wrapping up his education. So, and Form Families Forward, where I am on the board also, but got introduced to it through consultation with Kelly when I was pulling my hair out and trying to figure out which way to go. So that's my story.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know that several of us can relate to the pulling your hair out syndrome with our kids and trying to fit them into a traditional setting. So I'd like to move to the second question and asking each one of you for your programs. And I'll start off with the Virginia Homeschoolers Association. Do I need a teaching certificate to homeschool my child in Virginia?
Unequivocally, no, you do not need a teaching certificate. If you have one, that's great. It gives you other options for how you file as a homeschooler, but it is not required. In the state of Virginia, there are several options under which you can register your child as a homeschooler. There are 3, and the first is under the home instruction portion of the statute. And if you have a teaching certificate, then you would just indicate so. There are several options that you check as you file under the home instruction statute. There is also an approved tutor option for filing, which the major differences between these 3 options, by the way, is just which hoops of the law that they actually have to jump through in order to satisfy the requirements. So if you are a certified teacher, or if you have a certified teacher working with your child, you can use the approved tutor option, and it does lessen the number of hoops you have to jump through, but there are still some. And then there's also the third option, which is the religious exemption option. And so I can talk more in depth on any of those if people have particular questions, but to answer the initial question, no, you absolutely do not need to be a certified teacher. And in fact, you don't need to feel like you need to be a teacher at all. You are, you know your child best, and the way that you go about homeschooling, may look a lot like school at home, and it may not. So no need to feel fear if you don't have any experience doing that.
Thank you for that. So if I've decided that I'm going to homeschool my child, how do I demonstrate that my child has mastered their subject and is able to proceed to the next grade level?
So this is a loaded question that makes a few assumptions. So let me answer the assumptions first. One, you do not need to demonstrate that your child is mastered individual subjects and is able to proceed to the next grade level. You do need to demonstrate evidence of progress. And the evidence of progress can be done in a couple of ways in the state of Virginia. The first is that your child can take a nationally normed standardized test, and you know, they need to score within a certain staining so that they're able to demonstrate this evidence of progress. And they're only required to take the English or the language and math portions of that test. If they take subject area tests, great, but it's not required. And so I wouldn't call personally those nationally normed tests evidence of mastery of necessarily anything. So that's why I say that it's sort of a loaded question. But that is one way of demonstrating your evidence of progress, which is a requirement to demonstrate in the state of Virginia. The other way is by using a form of evaluation by someone who meets the statute requirements to be someone who can evaluate your child's evidence of progress. Some examples of that are traditional school, credentialed teachers. You can also use someone with a master's degree or higher in an academic discipline. You can, in some areas, you're able to submit a portfolio, depending on the school system will determine how you go about that. And you can also submit transcripts if your child is enrolled, for example, as a dual enrolled homeschooler in community college. You can submit those grade reports or transcripts as evidence of progress. So there are a number of ways to meet that. And so just to be clear again, in the state of Virginia, there are only 2 legal requirements for homeschoolers. The first is to file a notice of intent, not to ask permission, but just simply to notify the school district that you are indeed homeschooling, and you have a few options under which you can do that. And then the second is to provide this evidence of progress. And again, there are several ways to do that.
And one more question for you in this area. Is there help with college placement in any of the homeschooling options?
So the help that you would get with college placement would be through the resources that you connect with within the community. So there are no, again, there's no homeschool body that is a state accredited organization that provides the same kinds of things like a guidance counselor would. There are many private organizations and people you can hire to do such things. The Organization of Virginia Homeschoolers actually does quite a few outreach, and we attempt as much as we can to provide as much guidance as we can for people. We've recently done a webinar on designing your high school transcript for your college bound student, and our helpline, which is manned by volunteers who have received training, are often able to answer specific questions about those kinds of things. So we also have some links to examples and things like that for forming those kinds of transcripts. But in this age of the internet, it's really a wonderful thing to be able to access all kinds of templates and samples for transcripts should your child be applying directly to a 4-year college that requires some sort of transcript.
Thank you for that. Can I have the next question, please? So for Compass and Fusion, how does Compass Homeschool Enrichment support a homeschool program? For Jenny, if you could answer that, please.
So Compass offers small group in-person classes. We have about 170 classes at any one time. Those classes range from classes for preschool up through seniors in high school, and covers the gamut of everything from art and acting to robotics and science, foreign languages, just almost every subject at different grade levels. But the way that we work is completely a la carte registration. The entire program is designed to be very flexible, so people can mix and match and choose the Compass classes that best complement what they're doing as homeschoolers.
And
Do you want me to continue down the list?
well, I just wanted to, since we're very close to the topic of discussing the learning needs of a student, how would you support a student that has a learning disability?
So our rule of thumb is that our Compass classes are not designed for students with learning differences. We've actually worked with hundreds of students that have differences, but we don't have anyone on staff that interprets IEPs or necessarily knows how to work with those. We don't have paraprofessionals. What we do have are small group classes, and with classes that are no more than 10 or 12 students and sometimes as few as 6, we can often accommodate students that have learning differences. We've had a lot of students on the spectrum. We've had a number of students with Tourette's syndrome. We have many students with dyslexia, dysgraphia, a lot of students that have experienced anxiety and depression, and sometimes that's even stemming from their experience of being bullied in a traditional school. The thing that makes Compass classes successful for those students is for the parents to be upfront with us so that I can help them pick classes that are a good match for the temperament of their child.
Lisa, I'm going to just hop in. This is Kelly, because we did get a question. I think that someone might have come in a little bit after you did your introduction, Jenny, and there's a little bit of confusion about where the program actually sits. Is it virtual? Is it in person? Could you just do a couple sentences overview again? And I think we have Catherine joining us. That also looks like she's Lisa, and we'll figure that out. But Catherine is joined us with the fan above her head, and even though she's labeled wrong, so we have her join us. Jenny, go ahead.
Yeah, so a Compass is located in Herndon in Fairfax County. We have families that come to us from all over Loudoun, Prince William, Fauquier County, as far away as Quantico. We have families that come from West Virginia, Maryland, and DC. But our classes, all but 6, are in person. So out of our 170 classes currently being offered, only 6 are online because our classes are designed to be very hands-on, very experiential.
Thank you for sharing that information. I'd like to move on to Catherine and Fusion and ask for you to share, what is a typical day or week like at Fusion for their students?
Sure. First of all, apologies. Despite doing a successful WebEx meeting this morning, apparently my app needed to be updated. So I've updated. So a day at Fusion is filled with, I would say, 3 things. So class, what we call homework cafe, and social activities. What makes us unique is our students they have one teacher who provides differentiated curriculum for them. That teacher is their mentor. That teacher gets to know them. That teacher finds out what it is that intrigues them, how they learn, what they like to learn. So they spend 50 minutes with their teacher one-on-one. And then immediately after that, they spend 50 minutes in what we call our homework cafe. We have a silent homework cafe and a social homework cafe. And we have a dedicated homework cafe team of 3 teachers who spend that time working on homework that they had just been given in the previous class. And the beauty of this is they're able to, 1, work on some time management, 2, get some help on their homework, 3, get their homework done during the day. So for parents, it alleviates in many times that whole homework battle at night. And then we have the social component. So our entire campus has lunch every day from 12:30 to 1:30. We have campus gatherings. We have clubs. So it's a very action-packed day. Our students attend their classes in a very flexible way. Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then Friday. We have students who are there full-time. We have students who are there taking course for credit. We have students who are there tutoring. So it is an action-packed day for our students in a very individualized way.
And just to follow up with that, so our participants can learn more, how would one enroll their student into your program? And two, how do you support kids with learning disabilities?
Sure. So the best way is to give us a call at Fusion and then come in and meet us and allow us to meet your student and you. We like to get to know your story. We like to get to know your student's story so that we can decide if we're the appropriate place for your student. We can really provide the emotional, academic, and social support they need. So that is the best way to get to know us. And in terms of how we help students who learn differently, our one-on-one instruction model is really the key to that. Our assistant director has a master's in educational psychology and is getting a doctorate in special education. So she really is, Anna Larson, the person who sits at the top and provides training and mentoring to our teachers. And our teachers, through their differentiated instruction, are really able to meet students where they are academically, socially, and emotionally.
Thank you for that. That was very helpful. Can we move on to the next question, please? And that will be for Sarah and Virtual Virginia. I've had a lot of questions from talking to parents in the foster adoptive community, and they're interested in learning more about Virtual Virginia. So how can one enroll in this program?
So great question. As I shared, Virtual Virginia works with a variety of students, whether they come from a public school, a private school, or a family that determines that homeschooling is the best for them. Families can enroll students in Virtual Virginia, and the first step is really just to check with the local division and the VDOE website regarding that transition to home instruction. And once that's approved locally, the process to enroll involves creating a homeschool affiliation account with Virtual Virginia, and from there creating a student account. Part of that as well is designating a supervising adult who serves as a mentor, which the role really is helping as a learning coach, and that point of contact between the Virtual Virginia teachers and the student and the family. Beyond that, there is a registration period that whoever the enrolling family would select the students' courses, and the families choosing that option would work with the Virtual Virginia registrar, and we also have a school support coordinator that offers bi-weekly support meetings just to help through that process and get to know the families and help them choose some courses that would be appropriate.
And with the courses being delivered in the virtual environment, can students complete the coursework at their own pace, or are there set times that they would meet for a class?
It's a really important question because there's so many different models out there, and families are going to want to choose the model that's best going to serve their students. So Virtual Virginia's courses do follow a traditional academic schedule, so beginning in August and concluding in May. And Virtual Virginia courses are paced. They are according to the term that's selected. So our elementary courses do go a full year from August through May. And the secondary courses are offered on two schedules. There's a semester block that's an 18-week course, and that's for courses for grades 6 through 12, as well as a 36-week full year course. And they're just a couple of the AP courses that are only running on that full year schedule. Some AP biology, for example, and AP music theory that are only offered over the course of a full year. Throughout the model, the reason that we pace the course is that we do combine the synchronous instruction through Zoom platform, very similar to this, where students and the teachers engage in learning activities, and that is throughout the week. So there are whole group instruction, there's small group, and there's one-to-one. And because we want to make sure that the learning activities in the synchronous sessions are tied directly to what students are doing asynchronously, we do pace the work out. There is some flexibility for students to determine what their day looks like throughout the week and working ahead of due dates, but we do pace the work.
Thank you for that. And we've been talking up to this point about enrichment programs. Does Virtual Virginia have anything similar that would be available to students enrolled in the program?
So that's a really great question. We are continuing to provide enrichment. We do that through one-to-one in all of the courses because it's a part of the model of the feedback and making sure that the teachers, as they work with students, that if they see that they're excelling and doing really well, we can add more pieces to that. We are continuing to add for the K through 5 program as well, and bringing in pieces that students don't normally have access to, like ballroom dance, some pieces in the fine arts and world languages. We do feel that that's an important part, as well as STEM and computer science, in helping to round out students' educations and just, again, give them exposure to things they don't typically have.
Thank you. And our next question is for our parents and caregivers. So I'd like to start off with Carol and ask you to share why your family chose a non-traditional school option, and then we'll follow with Nancy. Carol, I think you're muted.
Oh, okay. Okay, so thank you. I was saying that we kind of knew since Evan was in preschool that he needed something non-traditional, but we really didn't have enough information to know what that would be, what that would look like. It was daunting to think about private school because we thought we couldn't afford it. It was daunting to think about homeschooling because I thought, how in the world am I going to be my child's teacher and administrator and parent? We already were having enough battles as parent and child. So it really took us quite a while. And the turning point was when really the anxiety and depression just were overwhelming. By 8th grade, he was miserable in school. And so I said, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm pulling him out and I'm going to say I'm homeschooling. I don't know what that means, but he needs relief. And then with the help of consultation with a lot of people, including Jenny, Kelly, a number of people, I realized, oh, we have a lot of flexibility. And so, I mean, that's a long story, but the short answer is our child was always an he is by personality unconventional. He actually is an artist through and through. And so he wasn't going to fit in a conventional environment. And he needed to be supported for his high intellectual gifts, but also supported for some disabilities and special needs.
Thank you. Nancy, can you please share why you chose a non-traditional school option?
Well, I think in some ways, maybe my story is a little bit similar to Carol's in that my daughter was diagnosed early on in elementary school with anxiety. But I think as she grew older and we saw she was both, had strong intellectual skills, but needed more prompting and more support for executive function skills, we found that the school system was spread thin in terms of the resources to help her. She wanted to be in a mainstream classroom, but as she got into the middle school period, I think there was just lots of things that made that more challenging, the social dynamic. And we were going through a lot of things with her. And as she progressed to 9th grade, she had panic attacks in the larger school setting, and we ended up both at the end of 9th grade, she sort of finished that year with the help of tutoring in the home provided by Fairfax County, basically, because she qualified under her IEP to finish her classes. She tried to progress through to 10th grade in a public school setting in a smaller school, alternative school that Fairfax County operated, but it wasn't the right environment. And she needed to be academically challenged, but she also needed to be supported in a way. And I certainly at that age, when she was in the upper grades, didn't feel that I was the right one to be teaching her at home. I think it's a great model, but it wasn't right for us. So we were looking for alternatives. And we looked at small schools, and then we heard about Fusion. And I think what really clicked with her there and for us was this one-to-one learning model. So it took away all the anxiety and the stress of having to talk in front of your peers. It took away any of the social distractions that were going on in the classroom, even a small size group setting. And she's always had a good, strong one-to-one ability with adults. And so this really was where she could just sort of let some of the stress peel away and proceed at her pace. And if some days she came into a class and she was still carrying over some stress or anxiety or emotion from the night before, that could be processed and then the class could begin. I mean, it really enabled her to sort of learn to manage her emotions and go through her activities and start to manage in a more adult way. And so for us, the one-to-one experience, it was a fairly young staff, but not exclusively. The teacher-mentor relationship, each subject area was a different teacher. And for us, there was also a great selection of classes. She got into music production there. They have a whole sound studio that she really found fascinating. This is really falls on the side of her interests more than what she sees her career path. Because again, maybe as Carol described, I think she has very strong artistic abilities. She has good language strength. She has a real ear, like all of her sensitivities are really highly attuned. But she has a very keen interest in science. So the other thing we found was they had individual labs. And so she could take a lot of science classes that were very stimulating. So it was a good way to finish off high school. And I will say, getting her through what was the beginning of COVID in 2020 when she graduated proved to us that for her at least, a virtual class would have been more of a struggle for her because she kind of needed those prompts and she really benefited from the I don't know, being in the same room with her teacher so that they could read other cues. But I think as she's grown older, she could probably handle that environment better. But I know when we were in negotiations with Fairfax County and looking at alternatives and sort of at a jumping off point, it really came down to saying, you know, what is going to be best for her, you know, and we found a path that allowed her to really achieve. And I think she could also, you know, still hang with other kids. As Catherine mentioned, they have a group homework sort of cafe, which she was pretty diligent about doing her homework in that setting, which was a big help. You know, when she came home, she was usually so exhausted at the end of a school day that she had little energy left to do homework. So for us, that model really helped her own it. You know, I didn't want to be prompting her all the time and reminding her. I wanted her to learn those skills, and that they helped with that too. So, I mean, I think it's just important for people to look at all the alternatives, because I think, you know, having the benefit of knowing what homeschool options or additional resources you have, as well as looking at private schools or something in between. I mean, and getting your child involved. Melina came with a list of questions, and so that was helpful too as we went on the tours. And she certainly, you know, found something that she felt more comfortable with. So definitely start early, before high school if you can. I think that's a good point to make a transition.
Thank you. Carol, was there anything specific that helped you and your family in making the selection that you did for your student?
Yeah, well, in terms of making the decision, I think we had a series of aha moments throughout his development, and getting educational testing was really critical in helping us understand what we were working with. And we got some of that through the public school system. Fortunately, we were able to do that a little bit earlier than we can do it here in Virginia, because we were in Florida where they did testing for what they called the gifted and talented program there to enter in first grade. So at 5 years old, we got some psychological and educational testing done, and we said, oh, well, here we're working with someone who has scores in the superior range on some aspects of intelligence, but has slow processing speed in other areas. And so then we could kind of understand that. And then when we got to Virginia and we were looking at third grade moving into the AAP program in Fairfax County, we did some more private testing as well as in-school testing. And we got even more information about, oh, we're working with ADHD and we're working with auditory processing issues. And so I think I would really recommend that people look into, if they're dealing with special needs, to get some formal assessment of that, which can be costly in the private sector, but maybe get it within the school system for an evaluation for an IEP if you're in the public school system, and then you can take that data and make other decisions with it. So that was one thing that was really important in making the decision, that we needed to be looking for some a different curriculum. And then when we got him into the AAP program, what we discovered was that is just what it says, advanced academic program. And another aha moment for us was when I came across, I can't remember if it was a video or an article. I think it was a video, and it talked about twice exceptional students, those who are intellectually gifted but have a disability. But then it further broke it down into academically gifted and intellectually gifted. And they're not all the same. And Evan is definitely intellectually gifted, but is not an academically oriented. He is not a people pleaser. He is, in the traditional sense, he's not motivated by grades in the traditional sense. He doesn't want to write papers in the traditional sense. So we had to look at exactly who he was, and really respect that and work with that, and what that meant for us for homeschooling. And in making our decision it was pulling a little bit of this from here, so he took courses at Compass. Fusion ended up being just a place that has really increased his self-esteem and social connections, and encouraged him to be who he is, because it's a very creative environment. And then he has a music production tutor, and then he's just a natural learner, and we just encourage his self-directed learning. So that got off onto some other topics, but I'd say that, one really big thing was getting to know what we were dealing with in terms of his disability and his ability, and getting that formal assessment was critical.
Thank you. I think the thing that sticks out for me is that you mentioned, you started off with Compass and then added Fusion, and one size does not fit all, and you may need more than one option to help your child find a learning environment that will be comfortable for them and help them succeed. So I'm sure that would resonate with some other participants as well. That brings us to the end of our prepared questions. Before we open for the participants, the attendees to ask their questions, I just wanted to remind them that tonight's handouts, the slides, can be found in the handout section. And we have provided the panelists, the professionals, their contact information is here on the screen before you. We did not include the parents for confidentiality reasons, but if it's okay with the parents, if anyone would like to follow up with them, I will be happy to make the connection for you. So with that, Kelly, do we have any questions?
We do. We have a lot of great questions, and I think we're going to touch on, I think, every panelist here. So there was a question that I think is important to sort of share from a more formal special education perspective, and that was a question about Compass and Fusion. If either or both of these are considered private day schools, I assume under sort of the special education continuum, and would that although this wasn't specifically asked, would that be a placement? Could either of those be placements supported by an IEP team decision? So I guess we can just start with Compass.
We have had a few students who have successfully been allowed to take classes here to satisfy requirements of their IEP, but we don't have that formal designation.
And I would say the same for Fusion. We do have a few students who are with us to satisfy formal IEP requirements, but we don't have that designation.
Great, thank you. We had a question about location. I think we have a participant who may be in the Richmond area. So there was some question about, I guess, reach. So maybe Sarah wants to start with that one and talk a little bit about scope. I assume you're all over Virginia. And Andrea mentioned in her introduction that she's also involved with the Embark Center for Self-Directed Learning. So maybe Jenny and Andrea can answer from their programs, is it possible for someone outside of the Northern Virginia region to access those services? So maybe Sarah, you want to start on how far your program reaches?
Sure, I'd be happy to tackle that one. So we do serve students in Virginia, sometimes out of state and sometimes out of the country as well. We do have some military families who sometimes when they're put abroad, they do want to stay connected with a Virginia school, and we're able to help serve them in that way. As long as students have a reliable internet connection, they are able to attend their classes and to complete their work and interact with their teachers and the students in their classes. I think the important thing to consider there is a lot of flexibility. Families travel, but this is a way that they can stay connected with their classes. So it does, again, it's just wherever they can have a stable internet connection.
Andrea or Jenny, do you want to talk a little bit about the extent to which outside of Northern Virginia your programs might benefit families?
I will say that, again, with more than 160 of our classes being in person, people need to, for the most part, be willing to drive here. We do have families that drive well over an hour to get here. We do have some online classes. From time to time, we'll have online workshops. And so we have families that have moved away and still participate. I have a student in Texas who participates in the cyber stage, which is an online acting class. We've got students in Massachusetts and New York. So for those that are outside of the driving distance, our handful of online classes and occasional online workshops are a way that people could get in touch.
I actually, rather than speak about Embark, I do have two things. One is referring back to the previous question, actually, regarding appropriate approved placements for kids in either Fusion or in Compass. One of the things we have found at Virginia Homeschoolers with parents is it's one of the major reasons why parents opt into homeschooling, because they know that their children cannot attend a private school if they have a special education designation without it being an approved placement. But that requirement does not exist if they are registered homeschoolers. So we oftentimes have had parents who have registered as homeschoolers simply to then put their child in a private school, but just not using them as enrolled private school. It's just what they do as their homeschooling. So if anyone is considering using Compass or Fusion or any of those as an option, that is one workaround for the private school designation. So I did want to just include that as part of the conversation. As far as Virginia homeschoolers reach, yes, of course, we are Virginia homeschoolers. So our goal is really to be able to support anyone who wishes to homeschool in the state of Virginia. Having said that, similarly to what Jenny has described, we often have members that move out of state and contact us still and ask questions, even though the state laws don't apply, if they're looking for evaluators that will work online, or if they're looking for curriculum resources, or if they're looking for you know, just any number of things, they may contact our organization. And we also, a lot of our conferences and webinars are available virtually now because of this new world we're in, and as a result, we do have people from out of state. So we are definitely not just Northern Virginia, and we're not even just completely Virginia in terms of the people that we serve. So I haven't really said much about Embark because that Embark wasn't necessarily on this panel, but since you brought that up, to talk about Embark Center, we are located, yes, in Northern Virginia, but as with Jenny's program, we have people that have come to us from 8 different counties and from West Virginia and Maryland, and also commute to our program for that very reason. And we're open 4 days a week, but it's an open campus, so people can come and go as they please, so they can avoid that terrible Northern Virginia traffic and tailor their schedule around what works best for them. So yes, we do serve folks from a lot of different places. If self-directed education, which for those of you that aren't familiar with that, it's also known by the sort of common phrase unschooling, which is a form of homeschooling where folks believe that learning happens naturally and the school part is optional.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to stick with you, Andrea, on our next question, and others may chime in after Andrea concludes. But can a parent, and you may have, I think you got to a bit of this, but can you clarify, can a parent homeschool without the assistance of a registered teacher or tutor?
Yes, as I said before, that is absolutely okay. And most of the parents that contact our help desk are seeking either guidance about this, trying to also clarify what the law is. And so I'm telling you here unequivocally, yes, you can homeschool your child without any teaching certificate. And I'm also here to tell you that for people that feel like they're not qualified to homeschool their child because they're not a teacher, or because, you know, for whatever reason, that's absolutely not true. You can if you want to, but not everybody wants to, and that's okay too, right? We're here to respect what everyone's decisions are. But if you don't want to homeschool your child, but you want your child to have the experience of homeschooling, there are great options for that as well. There are co-ops, there are pods now, which is a sort of new thing that's not really new, but it's become more vogue since the days of COVID. And then there are, of course, programs like Jenny's, programs like Embark, programs like Fusion, where you can have your child have the benefits of a homeschooling experience without having to do that sort of stereotypical sit at the dining room table and be like, and now you'll learn your 7 times tables, which nobody wants to do that, right?
Thank you. And anyone else want to comment? I mean, I think that was pretty clear. Okay, we do have a question about specific conditions, and this is fairly common in our foster, adoptive, and kinship family community. Children who might have had in utero drug or alcohol exposure, so fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, other prenatal exposure to alcohol, drugs. So those are very unique learners and often who struggle with the traditional environment. So I'm just going to open that up and see if you can give some specifics in terms of your access to your programs for students like that. And actually, maybe I'll start with Catherine.
Sure. So Fusion is a school that has differentiated learning. We're not a per se special education school, but we certainly meet students where they are. We form a collaborative team between the parents, the therapist, the family counselor, sort of wrap our arms around all of that to provide the type of instruction that works best for each of our students. And we certainly have students with lots of different backgrounds and learning challenges and diagnoses.
Thank you. Sarah?
So at Virtual Virginia, we do, there is a lot of flexibility for our learners. I think one of the things beyond the whole group instruction is the strength of that one-to-one in the small group, which you've heard echoed in other programs and options here. That really is a key to personalizing learning for students and meeting them again where they are. We do have many accommodations we can make in the online environment. A lot of times when students have an IEP or 504 plan because they've been associated at one time with a public school, they're able to bring that in and we're able to honor the accommodations for whether it's a reduction in assignments, alternate pacing, any time they need additional processing time. It is important, and it's part of that initial conversation with the family about the needs of the student at the very beginning before they start, to make sure that we know if it's a student who needs additional processing time, or if we need to work out a series of signals with the student during a synchronous session so that they can let us know where they are if they need to take a break. But part of that it's an important conversation that happens at the very beginning.
Thank you. Jenny?
I'd like to chime in that again, we have the most success when parents are forthcoming and they come and they say, look, this works well for my child, this does not work well. This particular type of class or environment has not been successful. Then we can look at what we have that is a better match for the needs of the child. A child who is struggling and maybe is a non-traditional learner in language arts or math could be very successful in a class in cooking or robotics or music that just takes the pressure of the academics off. The other thing is, because our classes really for K through 8 are largely enrichment classes, a little bit different story at high school where we offer full credit classes, but those enrichment classes, we tend to label them as being kind of a 2 to 3 year grade range. So you might look at a science class that says it's for 3rd to 4th grade. And our placement policies allow parents to go up or down a year. So a student who's working a little bit behind or might struggle a little bit more in one class, a parent may choose to put a 5th grader in a class that says 4th grade. And alternatively, a student that's accelerated in an area, a 2nd grader could go into a 3rd grade class. So that allows us to mix and match and really try to find the right placement for learners that have asynchronous abilities.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I'll just, Andrea, Nancy, or Carol, any comment on those more unique, very individualized needs of some of our learners that are in foster, adoptive, and kinship families?
I do want to say that if you check out the Virginia Homeschoolers website, which is vahomeschoolers.org, there is information on homeschooling kids with special needs. It is something that is very commonplace, and it's actually one of the higher percentages of people who choose to homeschool lies with special needs families, for the very reasons everyone has expressed, right? We're not forcing square pegs in round holes, right? So I think it's really critical to be able to consider those options. And as far as from an Embark perspective, at Embark Center, we actually did have a young person who was a member who had fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And again, it's really about expectations, right? It's about what are you coming to Embark for? What is your reason? And this is a question that I ask both, our kids with special needs as well as the kids that are, neurotypical. It's what is your why, right? So we can help you get there. We're not a therapeutic placement, right? But we can help you find the resources to get where you want to go. It's just a matter of sitting down and looking at what those expectations and what those goals are.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think for my daughter, I mean, we were rejecting any thought of a therapeutic placement for her because we didn't feel that would stimulate her academic needs. I mean, Carol talked about disability and ability, emotionally she had, I would say, trauma like PTSD in addition to anxiety. And but academically, I mean, she's fairly gifted, and she is a self-learner when it's something she's really interested in. So she can take advantage of virtual learning when she's learning a language and she's doing all her YouTube videos and whatever. But so in walking away from that, we really wanted to look outside the box, and that's why I think this alternative panel really provides some options that traditional private schools, certainly don't, and allows, for my daughter, it allowed flexibility in her day and her schedule that she could come home and downshift, but she could also pursue other creative interests that were good for her well-being and her confidence. So it was, not a therapeutic environment in traditional sense at all, but if she wanted still some of the social piece, but in a way that she could handle it. So it does take a lot of searching, I think, to find what works for your child, and it does take honesty in terms of an understanding of what your child is comfortable at and where they're challenged. So I think the testing idea is very important. The school system will do that, but it will not necessarily be the time or the type that you need it done. And so it's useful to pursue that if you can.
So can I say something just as a mom, not necessarily as the head of school at Fusion? So I know for my own daughter, I just felt like we couldn't get to anything until she was happier. She just was so depressed that she wouldn't get out of bed. And so she didn't have any physical or emotional energy to deal with all the other things she needed to deal with. So I really moved her to Fusion so she would be happier. I didn't really, the academic, that was downstream. I just knew that she wouldn't have the energy to deal with the challenges she was having until she was in an environment that didn't make her miserable.
I'm glad you said that, Catherine, because that's what I was going to say. Something I realize in retrospect is that it probably took a year and a half for Evan to really recover from all those years of him feeling like he was deficient because there wasn't a fit between him and the public school, or even a private school that we thought was going to work really well. And ultimately they said, sorry, this isn't a good fit because of his special needs that we thought they could accommodate. So he had all these rejections. And so I think that's important for people who might not be early in their children's educational process, but thinking about this, is that there may need to be like a recovery period where you're just gentle with them and help them get back to a point where they feel good about themselves and learning is fun and it's about having meaning in life. But really, in retrospect, I'd say it was a good year and a half of recovery. Once we started homeschooling, that's what we were focused on.
Thank you all.
The good news to validate all of your experiences, that actually has a name in the homeschooling world. It's called deschooling. And it's actually a very specific thing that we tell parents that on average, it's about a month for every year of school that your child has attended for them to go through this process of deschooling. And it's actually, you know, having been a social worker, it's actually very similar to this process of experiencing and recovering from PTSD, right? So it's a very similar process, the things that you're describing, and it is very common. So it's just something that would be valuable to know. And so that's why we tell people all the time, the younger you can remove your child from a circumstance that is harming them, the less of that has to be done. It just kind of makes logical sense, but it's hard to see when you're in it.
Thank you all. Thank you for sharing your experiences. We have one specific question about Richmond area again. So I think what I'll do, if that participant wants to contact Lisa or me outside of this session, we can connect you with Andrea, who probably is the one who's going to know maybe about learning pods and homeschooling activities in areas outside of Northern Virginia specifically. So we'll make that connection. And then we have one final question. And as you answer it, I'm going to give it to Sarah. I'm going to just do a little back and forth with our screens and get us to the next stage as you respond. Virtual learning. I think we've all struggled over the last 20 months, seen at least some time in virtual learning. And the question is about when a child is engaged in virtual learning option, how does the teacher ensure that the child is engaged and really paying attention? So maybe you can comment on that, Sarah.
It's a great question, and it's important for a number of reasons. One of the pieces that we do look at is what are they doing in the sessions. We want to make sure that their synchronous instruction is as engaging as possible, that they're actively involved in doing things with other students and engaging with the content, and that collaboration really is an important piece. Research shows that that's how students situate their learning. That is how they make meaning of it. And so the teachers, yes, they are there, they're monitoring, they're seeing how the students are engaging, giving them opportunities to participate in speaking and to present and to collaborate in pairs and sometimes in small groups. That's just a piece of it. The other piece is, what are they doing asynchronously? How are they working through the lessons? And so there's a lot of pieces in the learning management system that we look at to see how often they're engaged, what are the times, how are they doing on their work, and they get individualized feedback. So it's the two pieces coming together really in that model that are important to form that full picture of how the student is progressing.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any, I guess, Lisa, I'm going to hand it back to you while you take final thoughts. And we do have a request for an evaluation. I'll let Lisa make that ask.
Sure, but first I wanted to ask Sarah, on the panelist contact slide, we did not have a phone number. Our primary method of communication with Virtual Virginia has been by email. Is that the preferred method for families that are interested in learning more about your program?
So email is, we will always get a response within 24 hours. And I can, if you're using the chat, we do have a phone number that I can put in the chat if that works.
Sure, that would be great.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and do that now.
Lisa, you're muted.
Thank you. I thought it was green. I was just saying, I want to thank all of the panelists for participating in tonight's discussion. A lot of great information, and gives us parents food for thought on how to find the best non-traditional learning option for our students. For the attendees, we want to thank you for your time as well, and all of your great questions for our panelists. Before we close out tonight, there is a short survey we would like for you to complete on tonight's presentation. You can do it in two forms. One is that Kelly has put a link in the chat for you to click on, or if you are very technologically savvy, we have inserted the QR code onto tonight's slide. All you have to do is change your cell phone to photo, to your camera, hold it up to the screen and you will see a message requesting that the Safari browser open on your phone, and that will take you directly to the evaluation. And with that, any final thoughts from our panelists? I'll give you just a quick second to share. And if not, we would love for everyone, our panelists to our attendees, to stay in touch with us. And we can be reached through our website, which is here on the slide. It's formedfamiliesforward.org. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for all of our latest information and events that are coming up in the near future. So with that, I will close out with another thank you and say good night, and hope that a lot of good connections are made going forward for the non-traditional learning options. So thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.